Well, hey everyone. Welcome back to another conversation. It's good to be back here again. Richard here, and it's been quite a while. It's been about a year since I was last with you, since I was last shared some of my heart and some thoughts with all of you through the Firepit conversations. So, it was about a year ago. We were gearing up for another annual. Right, you heard some conversations with me and some of the team, with Steve, with Chris and Greg, as we shared some of the elements of that weekend, and then some other things that we talked about during that time, and then the conversation stopped. And many of you may know what happened, but there are many that probably don't know what happened. So as we return back to these conversations and really get this the podcast and these things really gearing up again, I wanted to be able to first just begin to share my heart of what's been going on, kind of give a high level overview of all of that with all of you. It's been a tough thing to dive into for me, and I felt like over the last year I probably wasn't ready internally to really share my heart in an authentic way with you. So that's why you haven't seen much from me over the last year. And there's a lot of things I've been wrestling with and walking through as God's been working on my heart as well since a year ago. So with that, where's Richard been, right? So here we are now, as you're seeing this, as this video is coming out, we have been a year since some really life-altering events happened and with me and my family, and it began with my bride Amber just a year ago. She became deathly ill. It was right at the end of October of 2022 where she began to feel some weird symptoms, and woke up one morning right at the end of the month, not able to catch her breath, not able to breathe at all. She was breathing very rapidly and very shallow, and so I knew right away something had to be done. We got her to the ER here locally in our local county, and we didn't know at the time just how grave and how serious that situation was and was about to become. So over the course of the next few days, we got her. She was transferred to another hospital where they kept her on breathing machines and to help her try to build her oxygen back up, but nothing was helping. She was in fact getting worse. So it was on early morning, November 1st of that year. So just a few days after being first admitted to the hospital. She and I talked. She was having trouble breathing. It was hurting for her to breathe. It was hurting for her to catch her breath. And we made the decision together that she needed to be intubated, that she needed to be put fully under, so that the machines could help her breathe and help sustain her in a way that she was no longer able to do on her own. And it got worse from there. Over the course of the next hours, I realized that she was in much more dire condition. In that early morning, as dawn broke, and the word was spreading out, and I was reaching out to friends and family and let them know, here, this is what's going on, and talked with the doctor, and he was telling me, I remember him looking me dead in the eyes and said, you need to be prepared. 2 of our kids lived out of the state at the time. You need to get your kids home, and you need to be ready for the worst, because there's nothing else I can do for her. She could no longer breathe on her own, and essentially all they were doing was keeping her alive. And so we almost lost Amber a year ago. I say almost because, through the miracle and power of prayer and just steadfast surrender to God, and just the work of so many wonderful doctors and that were working with her through that time, and the nurses, they transfer her to another hospital, got her on some machine that was to help sustain her and keep her alive during that time frame. And a miracle happened when nobody expected her to survive. Nobody expected her to make it through. We watched a miracle take place. It was a few days later, she was able to slowly wake up again. She actually woke up on my son's 25th birthday on the 6th. And then we still didn't know. We didn't know what was wrong. We didn't know what was happening. She was still hooked up to all these machines. But that was obviously a positive sign. And then over the course of the next few days, we would see progress. They took her off the intubation eventually and pushed her to a trach to help her be more comfortable. She was now awake. But at the same time, they finally discovered what was happening. It took over a week for them to discover what was going on, and we kept praying. We kept going after that, and the outpouring of support and prayers, and that came from so many in our community and across the country. To be honest, was unreal through all that, and greatly felt by my family. I always remember this. I'll share this. With several people, but the first morning when we found out it was so serious, to be able to talk to God and be able to stand in my front yard the next morning, and just tell him God, I surrender this fully to you. Whatever it is you're going to do, whatever it is you want to do, whatever your will is, it's all in your hands, and I will trust you and I will love you no matter what happens. And to come to that point was a tough place for me to really put it out of my hands. If I truly trusted who God was and and trusted what God's will was, I had to come to that point, even if it meant losing my wife here on this side of eternity, but her being healed into eternity. So that was a big part of it. And then over the course of the next several days and the next few weeks, we watched that miracle unfold as she was able to get to her feet. They were able to get her off those machines. And just before Thanksgiving, my bride was home, and it's just unreal. It's just so amazing, and just how good God was and how good God is and was through all of that was just utterly amazing, friends. So to see a miracle take place before my eyes, and I remember sitting down. She had some follow-up treatments that she had to go through after she came home, and I began to kind of write out the narrative a little bit of kind of what happened, just to kind of capture it in a way. And it was just this feeling wow, I've heard of miracles happening with even people in our church body in recent years. But to see it actually play out, I don't know if I fully appreciated and fully respected and understood exactly what that meant until this happened. Right, so whatever God's doing with that, and then we'll kind of wait and see with all that. So, but with all that, you kind of would almost expect, okay, hey, she's good, she's fantastic, she's home, and we're gonna everything's gonna be well, and we saw this miracle. What a huge victory, and it was a huge victory for us and for our family and for so many. Even the nurses and the doctors at the hospital that saw so many dire things that have happened over the last few years, to see that miracle take place before their eyes, and they needed that for their own hearts as much as any of us, I would say. So, what an amazing thing that God did. But at the same time, there's the aftermath. The aftermath I wasn't prepared for. The aftermath of what. Of just coming down from this emotional roller coaster that we were on, where we're going to get her treated, and now we don't know if she's going to live, and it's really serious now. We don't think she's going to live, and now we see her coming out of it. It's it was a serious emotional roller coaster from all that, and I was there with her side by side, with her every day, just watching her go through this, completely helpless to do anything as her husband, and all that. So I was spent. In all honesty, friends, I was spent from it all. It took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of my heart. I went through the Christmas season struggling, angry that it had happened, and I don't think I realized how angry I had become from it all. But I remember it was hard for me to enjoy the Christmas season because that was still just kind of in there, and there was a piece of me that had like just hardened up from it, from the trauma of that, of watching my wife suffer through that with nothing, being able to do nothing about it. So it as we got into 2023 and the year rolled on, expected to be able to continue to move forward, and I've had this conversation with friends as well, and trusted allies, that where we know when we go through a lot of things, whether it's an actual loss of a loved one or a friend or whatever it is, or something like this, you're expected to come through it, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and move on. That's what the world standard is. But the reality is it doesn't really work that way. Life doesn't work that way. And there's the after effect of what has gone on in this reality. And I found myself unsure of what I was doing. I found myself not, like, almost directionless in a way, and tried to work through that. We got through. We rescheduled our annual weekend to this past March, which turned into not to be a phenomenal weekend. Like, the Holy Spirit was really in that space, and in a lot of ways. And you'll hear more about that in another future conversation as we bring the team back in as well. But there was so much good that happened through the course of that weekend. And even me being able to kind of share some of the narrative and share some of the story of what had happened, and how my surrender and my faith was able to get me through that, was incredible. But at the same time, I was still working through, like, the aftermath still, and I hadn't got there, and I wasn't in a place to really talk about that. I couldn't really name it. It was a tough category for me to really go into, to being able to allow myself to grieve what had happened, which is a very important part of the process of healing from any kind of wounds and stuff that happens. I couldn't get myself to that point. So it was a very tough year. So coming after that weekend and all that. So there's a lot of things that have gone on, but the reality and the goodness of God has honestly, friends, been so prevalent through everything that has gone on over the last year. Even when I was struggling, even when I was hurting, even when I was uncertain of what was going on with me and what God was up to, knowing that He was right there and there was still good there, and I could remember that, and I could rest in that reality and truth, even though I was pretty wrapped up in some struggles and some stresses and some anxieties and things that had just overcome me and overwhelmed me over several months. So here we are, almost a year later. And friends, this is it's amazing. Like, I'm trying to share this narrative and trying to share it in a condensed space, but there's so much more to unpack. And I'll talk about some of the other, like, the smaller elements of it all in future conversations, as well as just what that anger was about, what the bitterness that had overwhelmed me, like, where that came from. Because I think that's important to unpack. Like, you don't expect those kind of things to happen oftentimes when a miracle takes place like that. That was something I wasn't prepared for, but I had to be able to walk through it, right? So talk about that. Talk about the grieving process a little bit more and what that led into. Like, it was just a couple weeks ago. I found myself, I was at a Heart of a Word encounter with our friends and Zoe. They came down here to Georgia this fall, and that was probably the first time since Amber came home from the hospital that I was able to truly grieve everything that happened. Like the Holy Spirit really came over me there, and it was really told me that it was time to let it go. Like, I felt God saying, what you came in here with, you can't take with you. Like, it's time to leave this here. So there's a lot more healing to take place. Take place. But I know God's continuing to train me up and all that. Like I said, we'll go into all those pieces, that restoration aspect, the grieving, the forgiveness, and then what God's up to next. because now here we are. We're a few months out. We're going to be back on mission again in this coming March, and which I'm excited about. And you'll hear more about that again real soon as well. But I'm so thankful just for the goodness that God has brought, for the goodness of God in my life and in the lives of my family and my wife, like she and I being able to talk through this together, to grieve through these things together, to pray through all these things together, and really seeking what God is wanting and what He's up to in all this. Because we were left with the question of, why did this happen, right? And that's a hard question to ask, because it's really tough to ask that. And because you look at the state of this world and the fallenness of our creation, we know these things happen, right? But what is God's will and what is God's purpose through that? How is He trying to use that situation? Like even Amber, as tough as it's been, asking, what did you heal me for, right? There is a reason, there's a purpose, like God's up to some good, there's always good that He's up to. So, and that's what we're going to rest on. That's what we're going to end on for this call and this conversation today. Just being thankful for the goodness of God, being thankful that, first that he brought her through such a dire situation, such a dire time, but the work that He has been up to in me and in her and so many that I've seen the work of God being done in, even outside of the situation. Like God's hand is everywhere, and it's amazing to see, even with all the chaos that we're seeing in the world before us. Like it's unreal, the goodness of God in this world right now. So thankful to be back. I look forward to sharing so much more with all of you as we dive more into this, and as we prepare for what's coming in 2024 with the next anvil and beyond. Like God's up to some good, friends, and I can't wait to see what's all about. So thank you for joining me, friends. I'll see you next time.